step back, I would say that we survived the difficult 2009 very well. I almost said we survived the recession. We survived that difficult period very well. First of all, notwithstanding the CLICO issue, we survived it with our financial system intact and strong. That's one. Whilst unemployment increased, unemployment still remained, the lowest level that has been cited so far is 5.8%. In the financial system, even in the US, you're seeing numbers of non-performing loans of 6 to 7% of total loans. We are still around 3. It has increased from 1.5 to around 3. 3.8. 2.8, right, 3, right? So I think by and large, notwithstanding the difficult 2009, we have survived this very well. In the period prior to 2009, the public finances ran large surpluses, and we accumulated significant reserves. The whole point about running large surpluses and accumulating reserves is to have cushion when you need it. And therefore, we were able to cushion the impact of the international recession in the first case by shifting from fiscal surpluses to a deficit of around 5% of GDP, and we had a pretty low external, public debt burden. We were able to cushion that, one, by shifting to a more expansionary policy, which we could have afforded, and two, because we had a sizable stock of international reserves. We spent close to $2 billion of reserves that were sold to the banking system last year. Notwithstanding that, our current level of international reserves is around 8.6 billion, which is the equivalent of close to 1 year imports. Anthony has gone outside. But notwithstanding, I think that we got through the difficult period fairly well. The challenge is, how do we now promote growth, and how do we now promote sustainable growth over the medium term? Yes?
Yeah, Governor, with an election approaching in the UK, senior public officials have been having discussions with the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats for some time to help contingency planning in both directions. Is there a mechanism for any discussions of that sort to take place here?
It's an interesting question. No, it's not the culture. It's not the culture. I mean, my contact, I mean, you know, if from time to time we are asked questions by you know, non-governmental groups, even by opposition, the opposition, you know, representatives, and we would answer. We are very cordial. We maintain good relations. But there isn't an institutional arrangement, to the best of my knowledge, whereby there's a dialogue with parties that are taking part in the elections. To the best of my knowledge, that does not exist.
I mean, do you think if there were, it would reduce the risk of either unrealistic promises or a nasty shock?
It may. I mean, I'm not asking for additional work, but it might help.
Governor, on the issue of unrealistic promises, how would you analyze, describe the Prime Minister's statement about cut in corporate taxes, and also news coming out this week about an increase in NIB pensions? Do you think either or both is realistic in the current environment?
Well, okay. You know, let me take the first one. I was here, you know, I was here when the large tax reduction from 30 to 25 took place. And I remember at that time it was stated the government's commitment over time to continue to reducing corporation taxes to international levels. I remember that was specifically stated. And I know for a fact that in subsequent budgets, as a matter of course, there is a routine examination as to our levels competitive with, you know, those people who are looking for the same investment dollar. So it is a process that the government goes through each year within, and I think that the 2020 vision document talks about reducing corporation tax further over time. Whether this is the time to do it is clearly not my decision. But I'm not surprised at the statement since it was envisaged in the longer term plan. What was the second? NIB pension. You know, there's a commitment. In the last budget, the government made a commitment to reducing the overall deficit from 5% to balance by 2012. There's an expenditure envelope, and every government decides how it spends the envelope. Do you spend it on social programs? Do you spend it on investment? Do you spend it on, you know, whatever? And therefore, within the context of the envelope, particularly if it is defined, and I think I'm getting more and more convinced that there's a need to strengthen poverty alleviation programs. I don't know whether that's the way of doing it, but I would suspect that any government that comes in would be examining all the options that are available for strengthening social programs. I would expect that to happen.
So, Governor, are you able to give any idea of how big the fuel subsidy is, either in the last financial year or the current one?
Well, it was quoted that it came to, you know, when oil prices got to 140 something per dollar, it came to over 1.5 billion, right? Oil prices have now fallen to 85. I don't know the exact figure, but I would use that as my guide. When it was, I'm sure it was mentioned in one of the budgets, when oil prices were over 100, it got as high at 140. The fuel subsidy had, sorry? I was really asking for an update. Yeah, I mean, but I would just use the guide. I mean, it would be, if when oil prices were 142 or 149, it was around 1.5 billion. Now that it's 85, then it would be about one half of that. That would be my guess.
We want to thank you for taking the time out to come this afternoon and to wish you a safe journey home. We have some refreshments outside, so just spend a few minutes with us. Have a good evening.